And joining me now from his home in Edgware is Rabbi Leivi Sudak, Loubavitch of Edgware. Welcome to the CJN Daily.
Good morning, Canada. Good morning, Jewish Canada.
Good morning.
Good morning, daily Jewish Canada.
Well, we don't know what time our listeners actually listen. It's a podcast, they download it, but I know lots of people, including my mother, listens right when it drops at 4 or 5 a.m. So there you go. So we're recording this podcast interview as we prepare, the world prepares to mark the 20th anniversary of 9/11, in which you played a significant role. But before we do that, I would like to step back a little bit and just ask you about your family's ties to Canada, because you do have a very important Toronto connection, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, my uncle is the head of the Beth Din in Toronto. He lives in Thornhill, but he serves on the Beth Din of Toronto. His name is Rabbi David Shochet. He's also the Rav of the Loubavitch community, particularly the synagogue in Vaughan, Chabad Gate, and East Snow.
Yes, and he's married to your father's oldest sister.
Sister, correct.
Right. How can you take a step back and tell us what you were doing, why you were coming to North America just before Rosh Hashanah in the early fall of 2001?
The Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson of blessed memory, his resting place is in New York, Queens, just outside the airport, actually. And I try each year to get to his resting place to submit my supplications to God at the Ohel. That's the name that we refer to the building that stands around his resting place. And I come there to pray for myself, for my family, for my community, for people whom I know. I stand there for a few hours, offer my supplications, asking for a good and sweet year for each and every one, and then I come back to London.
The whole story of what happened to you has been well documented. You speak often, or you have spoken, you have spoken about it when over the years. So I won't make you tell the whole story. Also, we have a short podcast, so I will summarize it. But I did want to ask you about, you said that the reason you want this message to be shared was because of the incredible outpouring of generosity and just goodness that you experienced unexpectedly from the people that you encountered in your journey there. So is there one particular person or couple that you really want to highlight what they did that is so out of the ordinary we should hear about it?
Yes, but I regard this story as sacred, because as the whole world was plunged into intense darkness by what had been done by these perpetrators, these terrorists, and everybody was reeling in shock and horror at the enormity of this perversion. One community of people, of 9,000 people, was totally preoccupied with looking after what they called the guests, the visitors, the 7,000 people of the 39 planes that were landed at Gander. There were other communities in Canada also that embraced people. My brother-in-law, he was landed at St. John's Airport. And throughout Canada absorbed, I think it was 140 something planes that landed in Canada that morning. However, I was, by God's hand, sent to Gander. And I was looking for the reason. Why have I been sent here? And as I'm sitting in my seat on the airplane, after realizing that we're in Gander for a little while, no knowledge of how long that little while would be, I reflected back at myself and I said, had I taken the earlier flight into New York, I would have already landed before the Twin Towers were hit. So I would not be stranded here. And therefore there must be a reason why I am here. There is, of course, the very beautiful encounter that I had with Ed Brake, Holocaust survivor, through no fault of his own, was expelled from his home country at the age of 8 or thereabout, together with his brother. His parents had paid a fortune to an English couple to adopt them. This English couple did their best to make sure that these two boys forgot about their ancestry, their homeland. I met Ed Brake. But I think that the greatest part of my visit there was the sheer kindness of the lady called Ethna. Then she was called Ethna Smith. Today she's known as CJN Daily. She was then married to Carl Smith, who was a corporal for the RCMP at Gander Airport. And these two people, realizing that there was a plane in Cornerbrook that would get us off the island on Monday morning to Halifax, Nova Scotia, where there is a shul where we could pray for Rosh Hashanah, instead of making our own minyan, so to say, at the Lion's Den, which was being offered to us in the town of Gander by the Lions organization. They chose to drive us 500 kilometers through the night so that we could stop off at a motel near the airport, catch the plane early morning, and get to Halifax. Ultimately, from Halifax, we got to Newark Airport. Bela and Esther, that's the other two Jewish women, Bela is the mother, Esther the daughter, managed to be reunited with their family for Rosh Hashanah. I had a car waiting for me at Newark Airport, which took 3 hours to get to my in-laws' home. So I was reunited with my family in time for Rosh Hashanah. And without Carl and Ethna offering to take us through the night to Cornerbrook, we would not have been able to get off the island. And the reason is as follows. We could have perhaps taken a taxi. There were no taxis available, except for one who wanted $2,000 for the job. But there's a problem. In Jewish law, a man is forbidden to be alone with 2 women unless he has an accompanying man, so it's 2 men, or 3 women. So in order to get from Gander to Cornerbrook, or actually it was Stevensville where the airport was, we had to travel with somebody else. And the law is more severe when we talk about non-Jews, and therefore having a couple, Carl and Ethna curled up in the back of the station wagon, we were not in breach of the law of Yichud. The same would have applied had there been a rental car available for us to rent. Once you're out of town, there's the law of Yichud takes place. A man may not be alone out of town with 2 women. There have to be 3 women or another man. So without the generosity of Carl and Ethna, we could not have gotten off the island in time for Rosh Hashanah. And making that journey was an amazing offering from Carl and Ethna. Now, just a little bit to describe about Ethna. Throughout the time that we were hosted at the Lakewood Academy in Glenwood, Ethna was sitting almost 24 hours a day, definitely 18 hours a day at the front desk. She was the one that was marshalling everything that was going on in the school. It was she who arranged with her husband, Carl, to get us the kosher food out of the freezers at Gander Airport. It was she who arranged for us to have a separate kitchen, a kitchenette area in the staff room where I could make a kosher kitchen.
You are in touch with her. Who else, if any, are you in touch with the maybe the Canadians who produced the play and wrote it? Could you tell us who you still are in touch with?
I've met with a couple that, I don't know if they're a married couple, but it's a man and a woman who originally produced the play. They did this musical as their, I guess, their thesis for their degree in university. And that was the core of this musical from which Come From Away was built. So when Come From Away came to London, I met them at Canada House. I have been in touch with Ed's grandson. He was very surprised by much of what he had learned through the play and then from me about his grandfather. He was aware about his grandfather's extended big toe, but he didn't know the story behind it. As far as he was concerned, his grandfather was never in Europe.
We should explain to our listeners, it's just that this was the way that Jewish kids were, I would say, tortured by their school.
By the Nazis.
When they were in 35 and 36 before they got out of Berlin. They tied them with strings to the wall and left them there with their feet. Yeah, from the stories he told you. Let's talk about Ed, if we can. You said this was the reason, one of the reasons you were sent there, maybe you feel now, looking back, right? Which was to hear his that he is a Jew and he unveiled himself to you. Do you have regrets that, he wasn't able to then live his life as a Jew towards the end? Because apparently his family wasn't having it. They were Catholic, right?
Well, I don't have regrets because it wasn't possible to even think about moving an elderly man away from his hometown. Gander was his hometown. He reached there when he was a boy. His adoptive parents moved from England to Newfoundland for business reasons, I guess. In those days, Newfoundland was like another island of the United Kingdom. Britain had not given up Newfoundland until after the war. So they moved to Newfoundland as it being a British territory. This was his place. So there was no thought in my mind of moving him from Newfoundland. In Gander, we found only four Jews. One was temporary there. He was a journalist for CNBC, a man by the name of Zeltzer, two other Jews. So there's no chance of a minion or anything else. We weren't connected with the town of St. John's, where I believe today there is a small Jewish community. There is now a Chabad representative in St. John.
You actually supported the mikveh project to help them build one. I saw that.
Correct.
Yeah. But as far as Mr. Brake's family goes, I think I read, correct me if I'm wrong, that you provided him with a tallis and some other Jewish religious artifacts and hoped that he would take them and use them to be buried with them. And was that ever done? Do you know? Because he died in 2008.
I sent him with Carl and Ethna. Carl and Ethna came to London. I think it was in 2005. They were our guests of honor at our dinner. I sent them back plaques, awards, one for the people of Gander, one for the people of Lakewood Academy, and one for themselves. And I sent with them also a couple, a tallis, and a siddur for Ed. Ed made a party when he received his Jewish gifts. So Ed was very proud to have his Jewish gifts. Ed, when he passed away, asked that these gifts be buried with him in his coffin. And that, I know, was carried out. I guess that is the best one could get at having Ed having a simile of a Jewish burial, because he's in a regular cemetery.
Did you ever see the play yourself?
Myself, I didn't see the musical. I was invited to see it. I explained that I can't see it because there are ladies singing, and a Jewish man is prohibited from listening to a lady singing. They gave me 3 tickets, one for my wife, one for my mother, and one for my daughter, one of my daughters. And towards the end of the musical, when there is no longer any singing, there is just music playing, they brought me into the auditorium and then brought me together with the other visitors that they could round up. They brought us onto the stage, and we stood there together with the members of the cast. And I remember being overwhelmed by the enthusiasm in the auditorium. Everybody was standing. Some people were standing on their chairs, clapping and dancing. The actors and actresses that were playing the music on the stage, it was exciting. There was lots of life and exuberance and dancing. But the play itself, I haven't seen, no.
How has being portrayed in the play sit with you? Do you like how they've had you in there all these years? Or would you prefer to have, I don't know, Brad Pitt or somebody play? I'm kidding, but you know what I mean.
No, I'm absolutely delighted with the way I'm portrayed in the play. I believe that the message is communicated very well. The choice of song in the play, in the musical, is correct. It's appropriate. We had people of all nationalities landed and stranded at Gander. Even at Lakewood Academy, it was a complete ingathering from all over the world, literally every type of nationality, including in the one room that we were supposed to be sleeping, which was the music room of the school. In one corner, there was a Hindu couple whom we later discovered they were on their way to New York for their honeymoon. And they just spent those 3 days that our flight was at Lakewood Academy. They spent the majority of those 3 days just huddled together in the corner of the music room. There were Arabs in full Arab dress. And there was an ingathering of coexistence of all peoples. And therefore the choice of song, Oseh Shalom Imramav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, he who makes peace above, he will make peace upon us, is most appropriate. And perhaps the one thing, the most sacred of messages that comes across from this musical, from the stories that are told about 9/11 in Newfoundland, is this very essence of the harmony of many peoples, the blending of many peoples, and the way the Newfoundlanders just absorbed us.
How do we apply, if we can, how do you feel there's anything to learn from that message for 20 years later, today, in the world we're living in today?
Just like they did. They looked at us as humans, as people, not as badge wearers, not as different religions or different nationalities, just people. And people, we all are together. And as people, we are one. As I often say to people when I meet particularly hostile people, I reach out my hand to them. And then I say to them, do you know my grandfather? And they pause. And I say, my grandfather is Adam. Do you know Adam from the Bible? My grandfather. Do you know Eve from the Bible? My grandmother. And they say, no, Adam's my grandfather. Eve is my grandmother. I say, oh, so we're related. So why do we fight? And perhaps this story of the way the Newfoundlanders just received tens of thousands of people, the Canadians received tens of thousands of people in those dark days, should serve to us as a message. We look at our fellow man, we're all children of the same couple, of Adam and of Eve. So why are we fighting? Why are we quarreling? Why are we trying to take away from another person that which is rightfully theirs? We each have enough for ourselves and to leave some for somebody else. Why can't we care for our fellow brother and sister, our fellow human being? If we have something and they don't, why can't we share with them? These are the messages that should be coming out from the story of Canada during the days of 9/11.
How, if at all, can you mark it, or will you be marking it this year on the 20th anniversary, knowing that it's coming up, the Friday, Saturday, 10th and 11th?
Well, 9/11 is on Shabbos. I'd love to have been in Canada, but it's the Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So that makes it extremely unpractical as a rabbi to break away from my community and to make the trip to Gander for those days. So I'll be speaking about these messages in my Rosh Hashanah speeches, my Yom Kippur speeches, and my Shabbos speeches. I'll be asking people, share the message with others. There is a beautiful line. A smile is contagious. Let's start an epidemic. We can say the same about kindness, human kindness. Human kindness is infectious. Let's start a pandemic.
Yeah, we need a better one than the one we're dealing with now. That's for sure. That's for sure. Is there anything that you would like our listeners to know that we haven't said? Any other ways that people should be marking this?
Yes. When Friday came, and we realized that our flight was not going to be evacuated before Shabbos, we realized that we would be staying Shabbos in Lakewood Academy. So I started making preparations for spending Shabbos. There was a man who was on our flight. His name is Irene. He's Jewish. He's a Jerusalemite, a Yerushalmi. But he was wearing the dress of a Tibetan monk. His place on the plane was actually just 2 rows behind mine. And whilst we were at the academy, he sort of avoided me. But Friday morning, I met him and I said to him, Iran, we're going to be here for Shabbat. Would you join us for the Shabbos meal? And he said to me, of course, but with 2 conditions. One condition is that you allow me to help you in the preparations for Shabbat. And the second condition is that you allow me to make Kiddush myself. Here's a young man who'd run away from Israel. He'd run off to Tibet. He'd risen in the ranks of the ashram where he was. He's now a qualified monk, yet he wants to make Kiddush on Friday night. I had a problem. Where do I find wine for Kiddush? I thought I'd buy some grapes and I'd crush them and make grape juice. I thought perhaps, just like in the United States, Welch's drinks have an OU. Maybe in Canada, Welch's drinks have a kosher certificate, but they don't. So where do we find wine or grape juice that's kosher? The man I was with, Jamie Jennings, the headmaster of the school, he says, let's try the liquor store. We went into the liquor store, and believe it or not, on the shelf in the liquor store, there were 2 bottles of Manischewitz kosher Kiddush wine. So, if you can find Manischewitz Kiddush wine for the Friday night of the Shabbos between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, please use it. And if not, at least when you make Kiddush and you drink your wine, have a little drink for the people of Newfoundland as well, and for the people of the whole of Canada as well.
We need it. We all need it. That's a beautiful message. And we want to thank you so, so much for sharing your story again with us here on the CJN Daily. All the best to you as you mark this really incredible 20-year milestone.
So God bless you, Ellen. God bless Canadian Jewish News. God bless all the Jews of Canada with a positively sealed inscription in the Book of Life.